Yeah, you're all very welcome along to the LGFA talk show here in LGFA HQ in the shadow of Croke Park here in Dublin. And I'm delighted to be joined this week by Denise Masterson, Dublin's 2010 All-Ireland winning captain, and Michelle Ryan, long-serving Waterford player. I'm Jackie Cahill from the LGFA. And we've a lot to get through, and we had a good laugh before we kicked off. And we're going to have a good laugh right throughout this show, I get the feeling. Guys, thanks for coming along.
Thanks, Jackie.
So looking back over the weekend, we now know 2 of our 4 All-Ireland Senior semi-finalists, and it's going to be Cork against Dublin. So at the weekend on Saturday, Cork had a big win against Tyrone, and on Sunday, the bank holiday Monday, which was yesterday as we record now, Dublin overcame Kerry. I'm going to move to you first, Denise, for the Dublin angle on this one. What do you make of the performance overall?
Yeah, I thought it was a slow start by Dublin. I thought there were a few wides, a few dropped short in the first half. I don't think Dublin will be happy with their performance. I don't think they were firing on all cylinders. I do think they'll take some huge positives. I was very impressed with Cavan O'Connor coming in. Again, Niamh Heatherton came on late, and Kate Sullivan, 3 forwards who I think are going to impress. But I was particularly impressed with Cavan O'Connor yesterday, and Aoife Kane actually wing back, who wouldn't be the senior player, so to speak. These are the up and coming ones. So I thought that was a huge positive for Dublin. But yeah, I thought Kerry really brought it to them. I actually enjoyed Kerry's style of football in terms of I thought Kerry's kick passing was very impressive when it was on. And I felt if they had have moved the ball faster at Dublin, I thought, when they did move the ball fast and beat the Dublin backs tracking back and the half forwards tracking back, I think they got through down the middle a few times. I think Ciara Trant pulled off a few saves, and look, Dublin won, and they won impressively in the end. I thought Sinead Ahern had a slow start. I thought she had a very good second half. I don't think Sinead Ahern will have a slow half like that. I think she's just coming back from injury as well. So, but I mean, in fairness to Kerry, I thought they really brought it to Dublin yesterday, and I think Dublin will feel they've a lot to work on now in the lead up to the Cork game.
Is that a good place to be, Denise? Like, if Dublin went out yesterday and hammered Kerry by 20 to 25 points, you'd be talking about them going to Croke Park to play Cork and their favourites, whereas now some people might have Cork as slight favourites, perhaps?
Oh, yeah, I think it's hard to call favourites there. I mean, from the All-Ireland final last year, I felt that Dublin beat Cork, but Cork were definitely a team that you knew they haven't gone far away. Cork are definitely, for me, the team to watch in terms of Dublin.
So it's just going back to that game, right? So the experience that the younger players on that Cork team will have gained from Croke Park last year.
Yeah.
How will that stand to them when they play Dublin now on the 25th?
The experience and the taste of it. They were so close, I'd say. And, when you get that buzz and you get that bite and, they know what went before them with the Cork team that was before them. And yeah, I think it's going to be a fantastic semi-final. I really think it's going to be a fantastic semi-final. And I think you're right as well. I think Dublin will be happy that their performance was below par yesterday, because I think everyone will refocus. I mean, it wouldn't take them much to refocus for Cork anyway, but I definitely think there'll be a few hard sessions now on the training fields and a few hard discussions as well, I'd say, after that. Yeah,
that was the tone of Mick Bowen after the game. He wasn't particularly happy with some aspects of the performance, and they've 3 weeks to get right what they need to get right, which is plenty of time, Denise.
It is, and like I said, I didn't think Noelle Healy had a particularly good game either yesterday by her own standards. Like I said, I thought Sinead maybe had a slower start, but they did what they had to do, and particularly I suppose with Naird, I mean, she played herself into the game in the second half, took her 2 goals very well, and that way, I mean, I think that'll stand to Sinead as well and give her a bit more of a lift going into the Cork game. I thought Kerry, in fairness to them, at stages did take control in certain parts of the pitch, and I think that's another thing Dublin will have to work on.
Looking ahead a little bit again, I suppose Cork, I might bring in Michelle on this one. You know plenty about Cork, Michelle. I suppose they were questioned after the defeat against Armagh, but they answered a few questions on Saturday. That was a much improved performance.
Definitely, and I think Breed said it last week that it came at a time when they could afford for it to happen as well, and no doubt that it refocused a lot of people within the camp, and they became eager to kind of set out their stall and correct maybe any mistakes that would have been made there against Armagh. And look, the measure of a good team is when you're faced with that kind of adversity, how you respond to it, and they respond to it in fantastic fashion, and kind of set out their stall going forward. And I suppose one of the things about the likes of Cork and Dublin there yesterday is that when even maybe if performances are perceived to be below par, or maybe just not to their standards, that when that button needs to be pushed to kick on, that they still manage to do that. And whether it's the, we'll say, more senior players in the team that step up and take that leadership role, or whether it's some of the younger girls, there just is that, I suppose, aura of leadership within the entire group, and they can rely on both the most experienced and the younger players to push that on. And the subs coming in obviously have a huge impact as well, and the changes that are made have had a huge impact for both Cork and Dublin over the last, we'll say, 2 weekends. So look, it's definitely was Cork setting out their stall, and they will be happy that they will, and probably will feel they have rectified a lot of things that might have gone wrong against Armagh the week before.
Yeah, absolutely, because if you look at the form line in Ulster, there wasn't a whole lot between Tyrone, Donegal, and Armagh, and then you come along and Dublin or Cork just blow Tyrone out of the water. So it's, form lines can be tricky. You might try and look for some kind of form which would have suggested that Tyrone and Cork would be a lot closer, but it wasn't.
But I think maybe what could have happened there as well is Tyrone just met Cork at a time when Cork also really knew that they needed to rectify a few things and to push on, and maybe just to centre their focus maybe that little bit. And unfortunately for Tyrone, they I suppose were punished as a result of that. And as you said, they've been very competitive in Ulster, playing against the likes of Armagh, who obviously beat Cork the week before. But I think this just shows, I suppose, the work ethic and the determination that exists within the Cork camp, that fool me once, fool me twice. Like it just wasn't going to happen again from their perspective.
It was also knockouts, so that's a huge difference. I mean, I don't think Cork were overly probably concerned about the Armagh game, but it was a knockout game yesterday, and that's completely different, And I don't know, I kind of thought that group, even though it was close with Tyrone and Mayo, and I do think Dublin and Cork are just slightly ahead of the pack at the moment. Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Time will tell. We'll see. We'll see. Michelle, from Waterford, of course, we know you have to be somewhat PC this week because you guys are out on Saturday in the quarterfinals. So we have 2 remaining quarterfinals, both down for decision in Glennon Brothers, Pierce Park, Longford. 1 o'clock is Armagh versus Mayo, and at 2:45 is Galway against Waterford. So you're playing against the Connacht champions, a team you know well. You played them last year. What are your thoughts?
Look, to be honest, we're looking forward to the game. It's not every year you get to play in an All-Ireland quarter-final. It's our second one in the last number of years, but before that, I mean, we wouldn't have been competing in the senior grade. So, from our perspective, it's a really exciting prospect and an opportunity for us going forward. But again, like as you said, we're up against the Connacht champions. And very convincing winners of the Connacht Championship as well, and also put in a very good tough performance against Kerry in their group game, and then comprehensively beating Westmeath as well. So look, I suppose they're really kind of feel like they're on the upward curve, and they're progressing really well. So we have it all to do, to be honest. But like I said, look, preparation is going very well. Training is going very well, and like you can't but relish these opportunities. And like as I said, no doubt Galway will have the favourites tag, but I suppose we've nothing to lose at the same time. And it'll take a big performance on the day from everybody, and subs coming off the bench as well. But as I said, we're really looking forward to it.
You played that brilliantly. You played that brilliantly. No, it should be a great game. I suppose from the neutral perspective, Denise, I would suggest that there won't be if Galway are favourites. Okay, I don't think there's going to be a lot in this game, Denise. I don't know what your thoughts on it are.
Yeah, well, God, even listening to Michelle, like that they're going to relish it, and it's knockout All-Ireland quarter-final, like it's fantastic. And sure, on the day, you know what I mean. Like if you look at Dublin and Kerry yesterday, you would have thought Dublin would have been way more than 2 points ahead at half time. That was, and then a few goals go in and that. So look, I kind of said it about Galway already in the league. I think Galway are a super team. I always kind of think they're going to do it, and then I think they fall short. So I certainly would not be writing Waterford off in any way, shape, or form over the weekend. Galway get a good run, but yeah, I think it will be a tighter game than people think, maybe, and sure, on the
Nice of you
day.
to say. With Michelle sitting there beside you, Denise. Well done.
No,
Well
I do.
played again. We'll have a look at Armagh Mayo, because this one could be another kind of wafer thin game. And I don't know, guys, if you saw Caoimhe Morgan, we had her here last week, and you could just sense the excitement in her, because like she's just an hour away from lining out across the road. So Armagh Mayo, Armagh coming off the back of that win against Cork, which I suppose has to be put a little bit into context when you see what Cork did last weekend. But at the same time, when you get one over on Cork at any time, it's a notable victory against Mayo, who, a little bit of turbulence last year, it's fair to say, but seem to have regrouped, and they're really playing for the manager, it appears, this year, and here they are in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, and again, hopefully it's going to be another close game. I mean, I think Armagh will definitely, have put the Cork game in perspective, but that won't take away from the lift it's after giving the team. Do you know what I mean? It was a good win, and I think wins like that will always, bring a team together and give them a bit of a pep in their step going into the game. Probably on paper, I would fancy Mayo, but again, I think on the day, Armagh could well take them.
Yeah.
So I'm completely sitting on the fence for both games, as you can see, not just Michelle.
Get off the fence. Michelle, look, obviously you could be playing one of these teams in the last four, so try not to give them too much sauce. But who's going to win it?
We'll stick with the PC here now. Look, I suppose we look and go from my own experience of playing against both teams. We would have come up against Armagh more regularly than we would have ever come up against Mayo. And Armagh gave us a bit of a trimming in the league actually this year down in Dungarvan, and they have the potential to do that because they do have such quality players in their side, and when they click and they move the ball very fast, which they're very capable of doing, and can slice through a defence very, very quickly. They're very dangerous, and they showed that against Cork last week. I mean, even I suppose in the commentary box when we saw Amy Mackin going off at half time, we thought they were really going to be in trouble, and lo and behold, I mean, Blaheen steps up more than capable of taking that mantle, and she herself and Caroline O'Hanlon combined excellently, to create the scores and opportunities for Cork. So they do have fantastic players within that team, but you can't but be impressed with how Mayo performed then as well last week. It was a really, really structured and disciplined performance that they had. They knew that they had to give, and they really did execute that very, very well, and just put Donegal under a huge amount of pressure, especially, we'll say, when it came to Donegal taking their shots and taking their chances. But their counter-attack was very, very dangerous as well. I mean, their full forward line was lethal, absolutely lethal, and provided, I'd say, not, apart from maybe 1 or 2 points, all of the scores that they got that day.
That front six is as good as anything out there when you look at them on paper.
Absolutely,
Michelle.
from both play
Kelly's,
and from
Rachel Kearns,
and there's so many options, and they all offer something that little bit different, and they complement each other very, very well. So look, as I said, I probably have more playing experience against Armagh than I would have against Mayo, but having watched Mayo, I suppose, and how they bounced back from the Connacht final loss would have been very, very impressive. So I just think it's going to be a great match, to be honest, a really tight one.
Yeah, it's going to be two cracking games. Armagh versus Mayo, 1 o'clock live in TG4 on Saturday, Galway Waterford. 2:45 is live on the Sport TG4 YouTube channel, Michelle, and there's also deferred showing the full game later on that evening. So very much two games to look forward to. We know our 4 intermediate semi-finalists now, folks. Tip will play Sligo. Tip beat Clare, and Sligo overcame Offaly at the weekend. And Meath will play Roscommon. Meath beat Wexford, and Roscommon overcame Kildare. So a little bit of revenge there. We were talking about this game last week. Denise, Meath got one over on Wexford in the championship after Wexford won the Leinster finals. So looking ahead, I guess Tip are still pretty strong favourites, but Clare gave them an awful lot to think about last weekend. It was a close game. When you look at it going forward, I suppose people would probably guess that it might be a Tipperary against Meath final, but there's 2 semi-finals to be played yet, so it's all to play for.
Oh, of course, it's all to play for, and again on the day it can go anyway. But I would fancy Tipperary and Meath to be in the All Ireland final. You know, mm, again on the day you never know, but I would be definitely going with Tipperary and Meath in those games in those semi-finals.
Just in an overall context, Denise, how important would it be for, say, Leinster if Meath could get promoted back to senior? When you have a situation at the moment where it's just Dublin and Westmeath, would just to
Oh,
get another team
huge!
back in the
Yeah, well, even
province?
for Westmeath, I suppose, because you can only say this one way, but like Westmeath are not having an easy run with it just being Dublin and Leinster either at the moment. So it's not like as if they're getting games within Leinster that, I mean, that's probably a little bit harsh considering I thought they really put it up to Dublin in the Leinster final this year. But at the same time, more
But the
matches.
margins would suggest that over the last few years, that
Exactly,
there
and
is a gulf
I
there.
know sometimes the final result doesn't really reflect exactly what's gone on, but Dublin do tend to pull away, and it seems to be a trouncing at the end, you know. But definitely for Westmeath, and I mean, God, like we used to have Meath really competitive, Kildare really competitive, and Laois really competitive as well in Leinster, and it's been even for Dublin, heading into that game against Kerry yesterday. In Munster you might get a few games up in Ulster. They're definitely getting a few competitive games, whereas as Dublin were going in on the back of that Leinster Championship win over Westmeath, and it's not enough. It's not enough competitive football. So obviously for Leinster, it would be amazing for Meath to get back up into senior.
Michelle, just observations on those two semi-finals to come, Tip and Sligo and Meath and Roscommon.
Look, to be honest, I was definitely expecting it to be a close game between Tipperary and Clare last weekend, and it proved to be that. And I suppose with everyone talking about Tip being, the favourites, maybe since the start of the year, that provided maybe a little bit of a wake up call for them as well, to refocus and just to ground them, maybe just a little bit, if it was needed. But they'll be, I suppose, even more finely tuned, I think, now going into this semi final against Sligo. Now, like having played against Sligo before, they're not an easy team to beat by any stretch. They have a good mix of experience and youth in their side as well, and very good footballers. I do see Tipperary overcoming them, just I suppose based on the overall performances throughout the year. But I think the other match, to be honest, I'd be very interested to see how Roscommon shape up against Meath, because I have to say I think they've been progressing kind of quietly and nicely throughout the championship, and I know they were reduced by a number of players. We'll say maybe for a few weeks there. I know Jenny Higgins was unavailable through injury, but she came on at the weekend, and produced a few scores for them. So, I think things are coming together nicely for them now in the last few weeks, and they'll be pretty happy with the 8-point victory at the weekend. And I think most people again will be talking about Meath, and I suppose they were Leinster finalists as well, and narrowly missed out on the Leinster final. But I do think Roscommon, could put it up to Meath if they really, I suppose, bring the momentum that they've had in the last few weeks to the game.
Interesting thoughts there, Michelle. And speaking of Jenny Higgins, she was in the commentary box on Saturday. We streamed the All Ireland Minor B final, and victory went to Longford, who overcame Roscommon with big viewership on the Facebook page, which was great to see. And we did Cork Tyrone after that. That's the second defeat in a row for Roscommon in a minor final, and Longford on the double after they won the All Ireland under 16 recently. So a notable victory there. Yesterday as well, as we're speaking today, Michelle, Cork back on top in the minor A final. They were winners over Monaghan. Maybe the scoreline at the end was a little flattering. But that was the sixth final in a row for Cork, and they lost out to Galway last year, and they're champions again. So remarkable consistency, and the obviously as panels change and evolve, the one constant there seems to be John Cleary for the last number of years. I think Breed was laughing last week; they just can't get him out with the job, or he doesn't want to leave it. So great guy, and he just keeps producing results.
And that consistency is really important, because I suppose the standards are maintained then over those number of years, and of play, and of both what you expect from your players and attitude and so on, and they know that he has the experience and the success under his belt, and obviously these players then eventually become drafted into the senior setup, and those players would have seen that he would have guided them through as well. So that's a huge boost for Cork, for those players coming through. And it was a very impressive Cork team, I have to say. Although at the same time, I really thought Monaghan really put it up to them in stages. I thought that if you'd said to me 10 or 12 minutes into the second half that Cork were going to end up with a 12-point victory, I would have probably laughed, because I really thought Monaghan were shaking things up a bit, and some of their wing backs were really moving forward and attacking very impressively. And I know there was probably calls for a penalty there at one stage, and in real time I did think it was a penalty, but having looked back at the replay, um I could probably see where the ref was coming for, just because it looked like it was a collision, but unfortunately she had lost control of the ball just before that had happened. And I think maybe I wouldn't say that was necessarily the momentum shift. I'd say maybe 3 minutes later, Cork went down and got a relatively soft goal where there was a number of Monaghan defenders kind of around, and I think that could just kind of open the gates again for Cork to kick on. Whereas I did think they had been, I suppose, struggling at times to cope with the prowess of Monaghan and the direct running and the direct ball and some of the excellent scores that they'd been taking early on in the game.
Michelle, I'm going to just kind of pick up on a point that you've made indirectly there. It's about kind of team culture. And obviously, John Cleary has built this kind of culture that sustains itself. So you come into a setup and certain things are expected of you, and there's certain standards to meet. Bearing in mind, and we had Kiva last year talking about 19 years in intercounty short year, this year 19th season as well. In terms of culture and how you expect your teammates to behave, to apply themselves, are you one of those that demands very high standards? Because let's face it, you don't stay at the top for as long as you have without expecting high standards of yourself.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I think I've probably in the last number of years probably grown into that role. I suppose it comes as well when you're one of the eldest, if not the eldest, on the panel, and I would have learned a lot from the players that came before me, and followed their direction and followed their examples. And I had fantastic role models in we say the Waterford teams of the 90s and the early 2000s, and just to see the application and the dedication and the commitment that they gave to that. And like, I mean, I've said it before. Waterford went through a bit of a decline in that spell in the mid 2000s, um, and over the last, I suppose, 19 years, I think I've played under 6 or 7 managers now at this stage. So, um, while every manager brings their own level of standards and their own levels of training and so on, it's very important that a lot of that is instilled by the players themselves. Because even if you don't agree with a manager's decision or maybe a tactic or whatever it is, if a team buys into it, it's very, very powerful. No matter what is put in place, it really is. And it's really important for a team to be united and to all push each other on. And like, if you're asking, would I be one of those in the training pitch that would, if things weren't going right, would I call it out, or would I say, yeah, I probably would, to be honest. But I have to say, in fairness to the girls on our panel, like there's a number of girls who would. And that's fantastic to have. And it's not about taking things personal. It's about, ensuring people are getting the best out of their training and getting the best preparation. And if something isn't good enough, that it's made known that it's not good enough, and not in an offensive or an aggressive way, but just kind of, I suppose, a coming together of just realization that, look, we're only here for an hour or 2 hours or whatever it is, or whether you're only playing for a certain number of years, like, don't look back and say, if, should have, could have, why didn't I, so yeah, like, I probably would be one of those players, to be honest.
Yeah, I know it's interesting. It's just a topic that I wanted to touch on with you, because obviously, Denise, over to you in terms of captaining an All Ireland winning team, and um, you don't just get to the steps of the Hogan stand by accident. There has to be something very, very powerful within the group, and there was something very, very powerful within your group to come back from disappointments as well, and from your own personal point of view, to suffer some things happened off the pitch that derailed your career for a little while. You need to be pretty mentally resilient to come
Oh,
through all that.
definitely. And like Michelle said, I think within the team, I think there has to be a level of honesty. I think you can't, not pussyfoot around, but I mean, you do call out in training. And like that year, we would have had leaders on the team, and we wouldn't have accepted below par standards from each other. And it was self-regulated. It wasn't, and again, it wasn't in a nasty way, or it wasn't in a way to. But if the training session wasn't good enough, we knew ourselves, and we'd pull each other up, and we drove it on, I suppose. Like Michelle said, the structures are in place, but it has to be driven by the players, and you have to buy into it. And I also think it builds that sense of camaraderie. Like, you know, you might be on someone's case about something, but you'd have their back in a game. Do you know what I mean? It was very much, you were a very, very tight unit. And I suppose when you talk about my career being derailed, I suppose that made it very hard in terms of, because you've built up these hugely strong and important connections and loyalties and friendships, and the highest high, well, you can hit the lowest low when you feel like that they've been damaged in some way. I suppose it depends on your own standing on it as well, but they would have been stuff that I held very important, the whole loyalty and the team ethic, and you thrive on it within the group. It's a very it's powerful, but it's nearly addictive. Like, you're getting to training, you're driving each other on. It's
How do you know when you have it then? Like, I mean, how like you talk about, we drive each other on if we see something that we don't like, we call it out. Is it so, can you know or recognize when somebody's
yeah,
not
I
working
suppose
hard enough?
definitely, but I suppose the important part is how it's received. If
It's got to be constructive criticism rather than taking the head off someone.
yeah,
But
exactly,
then
but
again, maybe
also
there's times when somebody needs the head taken off.
yeah, and sometimes if it's constructive and not received in that way, I'd worry about the team dynamic. Like, so if someone had said to me, "Get back, you're not working hard enough," I'd have said, "You're right, sorry," or that way. If you said something to somebody and they say, "Get the next pass right," whereas as I think if it's becoming a defensive thing, there's something wrong within the team. I think it has to be given and received in the truest sense of what it's all for. It's for the improvement of the group as a whole. It's not about an individual. It's about the play. It's about you know, your whole, how the whole thing, the mechanics of the whole system. I don't think you can take it personally, and yeah, it should never be given in an aggressive way. But I think for me, I would be looking at how it's received, as well as how it's given.
Yeah, and just in a bigger picture context, Michelle, just, are you training tonight, for example?
No, not tonight.
Okay, but
No.
like there will be days where you're going here, there, and everywhere, and that's happened for the last number of years.
Hmm.
And you're coming into an environment at the start of the year where you're going to know that you're going to give up a lot of your personal time, a lot of sacrifices. So if somebody is derailing what you're trying to do and trying to ultimately achieve, well, it's not good for you. It's not good for the group. So how do you deal with something like that then?
Well, I suppose, look, ultimately, like as Denise said there, if you see that somebody maybe isn't pulling their weight or their attitude isn't right, it's not even necessarily a personal thing that they're derailing your dream or your career or anything in that sense. It's more that as I said, the unit is incredibly important. So if one cog in that unit isn't working to the standards that you've all bought into and you've all come to expect of each other, then you're leaving yourself open to the, well, we should have or we could have or why didn't we? So and it's just, I suppose, it's important to make those things known and for those things to be understood within the group from day one. And yes, I mean, sometimes it does take the reminding of each other that look at what we've given up and look at the things we don't get to do, and you're here X number of nights a week and for X many weeks of the year, giving up, family occasions, social occasions, maybe creating a bit of strife in personal or family relationships because training is number one, and there's never a question that you miss training. But I suppose that's where an important structure around you comes in, and people are always very supportive. But sometimes we do have to maybe remind each other of this is what we're doing, so we're not going to have to it. It's being I suppose, an intercounty player, especially, I suppose, in the last, we'll say, for me personally, I suppose in the last 6 or 7 years, I mean, the standards really have been raised so much, and it's not just things that happen on the training field anymore. There's an awful lot more that goes into it, and it's you drive out from training, and there's another 6 or 7 things that you have to worry about doing before you come to the next training session to make sure that you are prepared. And the older you get, the more recovery things you have to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just to look after yourself. But that's the responsibility you shoulder. So, if people aren't doing that for themselves as well, if the rest aren't doing that for themselves, it's this thing of letting down the team, and nobody wants to let down the team. And if you're
very different personalities within the team, of course, which
Yeah,
adds to
absolutely.
the amusement and the frustration, I suppose, that way. But, I suppose I would have been a psychopath in terms of, I would have, followed. And, you can't expect, I would have, if we were told what to do, I did it. And that was it, that way. Yeah. Whereas, you can't have all those people within the team. And you even in terms of a game, you don't want all those people on the team because you need someone with the flair and you need someone with and I think that's a personality thing as well. So, you probably have to get a balance somewhere. You can't all be
It's
regiment.
tricky then, this management thing,
Oh,
obviously,
it's a very
trying to
fine
marry all
balance.
those different
Exactly,
personalities.
exactly.
But there's a process in sports psychology which is storming, forming, norming, performing. So you go through that actual process. I don't know if that's a conscious thing that's done sometimes or whether it just happens. And then you're into goal setting and all the various different elements. It's a chat I could talk to you all day about. I'd love to get more into it, but some very interesting thoughts there. Going back to what's coming up over the weekend, we've already looked at the 2 senior quarterfinals. There's some sorting out to be done in the junior championship as well. One game is left in Group A. It's round 3. It's London against Carlow. Looking at the table, Louth are through, so this is more or less a straight shootout to see who joins them in the semi-finals. And in Group B, we have on Sunday the meeting of Fermanagh and Derry. That table's still pretty evenly poised. 3 Ulster teams there. Fermanagh and Antrim both on 3 points. Derry on 0 points. So a win for Derry, and you're down to score difference in that one there. So still plenty to be played for. Just going back to the senior championship and more towards the other end of the scale, Cavan and Westmeath, Michelle play on Sunday in Kinnegad at 3:45 p.m. The winners are safe from relegation, and the losers get a second chance against Monaghan. So, Cavan and Westmeath, on paper, again, this looks a close one.
Yeah, it does. And look, I suppose Cavan, when it came to it, obviously very disappointed to be in this situation, and maybe would have felt, having had that first victory in their group game, that there was probably the possibility of being preparing for a quarter final. But look, they're in the situation that they're in, and again, will be disappointed with it. But having seen Westmeath in the Leinster final and seeing that the fight that they did put up to Dublin, I feel like maybe they maybe lost a little bit of momentum and maybe a little bit of belief in themselves since then in their performances in the group stages. And I think they will have more to do to pick themselves up going into this game than necessarily Cavan. And look, as I said, we've had numerous battles with Cavan over the years. They're an incredible side, and to my mind, are very unfortunate to be in this situation. I mean, ourselves and themselves were both in this situation last year with Tipperary. Um, and it came to them ending up having to beat Tipperary to stay senior. And looking at the teams and I suppose looking at them on paper and knowing some of the players pretty well, I'd have to fancy Cavan to overcome Westmeath. I think they would have too much firepower up front. I think they're very talented and skillful footballers up front, and their ability to create scores. And I mean, we said it here the week before the first group game, even if they're down by 3, 4, 10, 12 points, they really do finish games out very, very well and go to the final whistle. Um, so I would be expecting Cavan to come out safe out of that.
Denise, just on that game, Cavan Westmeath, look, it's the other end of the scale. You've scaled the highest heights in terms of winning All Irelands and that. So how do players, I guess, how will players be feeling about the prospect of just trying to survive and to preserve their senior status? It's a very different mindset and mentality, really, isn't it? Like,
It is, and I think Michelle is right. I would say Cavan are in a slightly different position, and that I'd say Westmeath are slightly deflated. And you talking about the possibility of Meath coming up, and then there's the possibility of Westmeath going down. So but I would agree with you. I would say that they might be a bit deflated, whereas Cavan, they had a good run of it. They might be feeling unlucky. I'd say they want to now nearly put it to bed. So again, and I was, like I said about Westmeath, I really admired their performance against Dublin, and I thought it was a very gritty performance in that, and I'd love to sit, but I do think Cavan will possibly beat them, which again, I think Westmeath go on then and play Monaghan,
Yeah.
the loser goes on and plays
Yeah.
Monaghan, so, but I'd be hoping Westmeath don't go down for Leinster football on the flip side of maybe Meath coming up, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a whole different way of trying to get yourself geared up. Girls are probably, I suppose, you know what it is. They're probably feeling more tired when you're coming towards an All-Ireland final. It doesn't matter how long the season has
The
been.
energy will
It's
just
the
take you
pinnacle.
through,
The energy just keeps going. Whereas, I think deflated is the word to use at that end of it, and it's hard to pick yourself up and finish it off. And
Kind of as well, I suppose, just looking back to last year, there is that sense of deflation when you're in that situation, but it then, I mean, our management excellently last year, it became a matter of pride then. It became a matter of, we work so hard to get from intermediate up to senior. I mean, it took us 6 years, and the pride in the achievement and all the work that had gone in since then, and just the pride in the jersey, and not to allow that to slip back, and that's would have been how we would have approached it last year. I mean, we were up against two teams that we knew very well, Cavan and Tipperary. Going out on any day, any one of us could have beaten each other, so I think it will hugely come down to Cavan, Westmeath and Monaghan. The pride has to come into it there, and I do agree there will be a tired maybe. Mentally, it's hard to pick yourself up for something like that, but I just think Cavan probably are in the best position in that scenario.
Okay. And we also have intermediate championship relegation playoffs on Sunday. Limerick and Laois is in Kerry at 2 o'clock, and Wicklow Leitrim is in Kinnegad at 2 o'clock. Limerick Laois, Limerick, who were the junior champions last year, against Laois, who were once All-Ireland Senior Champions, who could drop down to the junior grade. So it's a steep fall from grace if that happens. And Wicklow against Leitrim as well on Sunday. It's 2 down this year. Michelle, it's winner takes all on Sunday in both of those games. There's no second chance. You lose, you're gone.
And that's it, and that's the way they all will have to approach that. I mean, like you said, there's no second chance, and I suppose the stalwarts of ladies football will be sad to see the likes of Laois in that position. I know, me growing up, Laois were a hugely formidable side, both in club and some of their club sides and their county side over a huge part of say the 90s and early 2000s, and I suppose Limerick as well would be looking to make sure they maintain their intermediate status, having not been long in that position. Look, it's all to play for everybody going out there. I think it'd be very hard to pick winners and losers there, because you'd be surprised what can happen when it comes to a do or die game like that, and it's a fight to the death, and you're out there to I suppose for the sake of your county and yourself and your club and all that, and the future of ladies football, within your county, to maintain that and to progress, and because it takes a lot to go back and rebuild and to get back to that to that status again. So I really think it's all to play for all sides, to be honest, and I've no doubt that they'll feel the same, and they won't. Favourites tag will mean nothing to anybody going into those two games.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. A good way to finish up. Just to run you through the fixtures. Saturday, 10th of August, we have the 2 quarter-finals in the Senior Championship. Armagh, Mayo, Galway, Waterford, both in Longford, Lennon Brothers, Pierce Park. Also on Saturday, Junior Championship Group A, Round 3, London versus Carlow in Ruislip at 12. On Sunday, then those relegation playoffs in the Senior, Cavan, Westmeath, Intermediate, Limerick versus Laois and Wicklow versus Leitrim. And on Sunday, also in the Junior Championship, is Group B, Round 3 for Fermanagh versus Derry is in Devonish in Garrison, County Fermanagh at 2 o'clock. So those are your upcoming fixtures. Michelle, I'm just going to finish off very quickly. We had Kiva here last year. She was looking out the window, looking at Croke Park wistfully, and saying to herself, "My God, I could be there soon." So when you're here and you look out, and it's a tantalising prospect. A lot of work to do before it even becomes a reality. But as the paint ad, wasn't it? Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it? Yeah. I mean, when you come up here and you see it, maybe like even the mentality of this week, Michelle. What like do you relish people talking to you about the game, or would you rather go away? I just want to get it out of my head and concentrate on Saturday.
Well, with regards to the whole prospect of Croke Park, and honestly, that has not even been mentioned. And we genuinely haven't even spoken about anything beyond this Saturday. And to my mind, that's the way it should be. Because I never feel it's beneficial to play to the results or to the rewards. That also always you have to play to the process, and to keep a mind on the process rather than what you would get out of it. So that's been our approach, and that would have been our approach not just even just this year. I suppose over the last number of years, it's been something that has been, I suppose, instilled in us, and it's something that we really value. And so with regards to that, we're only thinking as far as Saturday, and after that, we'll worry about that then later. But I suppose, what was the other question?
No, just in terms, do you prefer to stay away from the talk?
Oh, yeah.
Or would you rather people, or do you embrace it? Well, look, you can't get away from it.
I'm here with a microphone in my hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I suppose I think it's maybe a thing as well when you get that little bit older as well, that you just relax a little bit more into it. And definitely there was probably a time, maybe we'll say 7 or 8 years ago. I suppose when we were competing in our first intermediate All Irelands, and just was that little bit younger as well. And even though you were looking forward to these things and excited about these things, talking about these things was nearly making you anxious about it, and maybe maybe stressing you out that little bit, whether you realize it or not. But as you get that little bit older, I think you relax into things that little bit more, and you appreciate what you get to experience with football at the end of the day. And I suppose you're also seeing, this isn't going to go on forever, and sometimes people ask me as well, like, about how long I'm playing, and just you'll always say to yourself, there'll be plenty of time when you won't be playing. So you get to a stage in your career where you're saying, enjoy the good days, enjoy the prospects, enjoy the opportunities. And that would be, I suppose, where I'm at now with maybe the last 2 or 3 years. And I don't mind people coming up talking to me about the game, to be honest. I love that they have an interest in it. I love that they know about it. And I love that that they're following it. And that says a lot. And especially if it's somebody maybe who might have thought wouldn't have had an eye on it, or maybe somebody you wouldn't get to talk to that often, or wouldn't even necessarily have a link with the team. Like, it's fantastic. And there is an awful lot of interest after being generated in ladies football in the last, I suppose, especially this year, and especially with the whole 2020 and females in sport and so on. And people are, I suppose, becoming more aware that like, there are some good role models as well, in an international sense as well as a national sense. And they're keeping an eye on, they're just more out there now for people to see. And because people are noticing them, then they're tuning in themselves, of their own will and of their own wish. And I actually think that's fantastic. So I don't mind talking about it, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you might be back here in 10 years in your 29th season, still talking about how you're...
Be worried about me if I was back still here.
Denise, and I'm going to finish with you. Obviously, look, would you like another shot out there if it, do you ever think about, or are you happy?
Yesterday.
Like, you've got, yeah, I mean, you've got different, worries
Exactly,
and
my
anxieties in
priorities
your
have
life.
changed, and
You're a
like
mummy too,
and I do kind of just roll with that. But I will not lie, when I looked at the girls running out onto the pitch yesterday, I thought I would absolutely, and just before the throw in, like, you're just getting into position, you're just wondering how it's all going to go, and you're just up for it. Like, I really missed that feeling yesterday watching for me, knockout, and it's the All-Ireland quarter-final. And I just, yesterday now, I thought, and exactly like, very deep there from Michelle, but that's exactly it, like, to relish it and enjoy it. And I do think that you learn that more, you don't get as stressed out, or, but, oh, who wouldn't give another shot at lining out in Croke Park, Jackie? Yeah, I'd love it. You got something lined up?
We might do a kind of a rap.
Over
A rap,
50s.
yeah, well, I'm not that old yet. We might do some kind of rap exhibition game after this series. Guys, great chat. Great having you in. Michelle, all the best the weekend. Great to have you in. Michelle Ryan from Waterford and Denise Masterson from Dublin. So plenty to look forward to over the weekend. That's been the LGFA talk show for this week. Over and out. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.